What's up, guys? I'm trying to go live, but it's not showing on my. I don't know why it's not showing. It's not showing. It's not showing on my computer, so I'm gonna wait and see if everybody can see me. Oh man. Whew. Okay. Go to video. Create. Go live. Okay. Waiting, waiting, waiting. Let's try this. Jason, what's up, man? You can see me. I'm trying to get everybody. I guess I don't have the software. I've never done this before where I scheduled live, but I am live for you. Hopefully, everyone else will find me. All right, man. What's going on? So, guys, I wanted to, this will be recorded anyway. Oh, you had to click live. Let me tell everybody to click live. Okay. Very frustrating. Live and you will see me. There we go. You guys are there. You're slowly coming over. Sorry for the confusion, guys. So, yeah, I wanted to, I guess, do a little preamble about the El Salvador episode that I filmed a year ago, just so that people have the right expectations and also answer any questions that you had. And I do apologize. This is kind of new for me, trying to figure this out as we go along. But basically, I filmed in El Salvador, what is this, April? So it was June of 2024. And the reason I went to El Salvador was really simple. It was not to film. It was the only Central American country I had not been to. And if you will recall, some of you who've been with us since season one, we filmed in Central America most of that season, and the only country I didn't go to is El Salvador. So a lot of El Salvadorians, I wouldn't say they gave me grief, but they always wondered, why didn't you go? And a lot of people thought maybe it was because it was dangerous, but that really maybe played some role in it, but not really. It was just more agendas and trying to get the show off the ground and busing through Central America. If any of you guys have done it, wow, it's tough. It's tough. That was one of the toughest experiences I've ever had. So I wanted to go back. And then United Airlines owed me, I don't know, $300 or something for one of their dropped ball flights when I was going to Ukraine or something. So I just saw they had a special to El Salvador, really cheap, and I went. And incidentally, it was like taking a bus in the sky. There was like no air conditioning. An elderly passenger passed out in the middle of the flight, and I thought, "Oh my God, this person's going to die." It was a hell trip. But when we did go, the person was okay, thank goodness. We didn't make it to El Salvador, and the reason I got there, the reason that I went was just to see what was going on, like safety and security wise, to see basically what everyone had told me, how wonderful El Salvador was, of the El Salvadorians, and also because I'd heard rumblings about what Bukele was doing in order to get that safety and security. And so I went with a mission really just to see it personally. But, what happens is it started raining and had been raining for days, and I was bored. So I started filming. And even though I wasn't really prepared for it, I didn't really bring all my gear. I wasn't prepared for filming. I wasn't going to do a show. I'm done with that. So it's like, maybe I can put something on the internet at least. And so I just kind of, reverted to my old ways of filming. And then finally the sun came out, and I was on El Tunco Beach, which is a surf beach, if any of you guys have been there, not that far from what is called Bitcoin Beach, which I never made it to. But that was another curious aspect of it. I wanted to see, is Bitcoin being used? How widely is it being used? And so I don't have a lot to share, or I have a lot to share in the episode about the two aspects of why I went down there, which was, what do people think about Bukele and him, locking up people really for reasons of just having tattoos, etc., and how much is Bitcoin being used? So the observations that I had was, number one, just on Bitcoin, it isn't used a lot, but it is attracting an interesting group of expats. I'm not a Bitcoin bro. I like real money. It's just not my thing, man. Bitcoin is not my thing. It doesn't feel like, and maybe I'm missing something here, but it feels like people are speculating. And it's also a great place for dark money to go, which is some of the bad things that are happening in the world that you can't track. Now, I understand the benefit of what people are saying about Bitcoin as well. But the people that I saw are kind of the people that, expats are expats, man. You get a mix of people. I don't know if any of you guys saw The White Lotus, but, I lived in Colombia for a year back in 2010 and 11. And I have to tell you, there's not many people that were there that I would hang out with in the United States. I hung out with them there because they spoke English, and we got along. I'm not going to say I met some good people, but I met a lot of people that were shady, dishonest, felt like they were hiding something, wanted me to invest in a gold mine, were there for sex tourism, drug tourism, and mixed in that are some good people. And I think for me, I learned something valuable out of that was, especially living in Medellin, was being judged by people who aren't me, but being judged in that prism, right? Because I'm a gringo in Medellin, Colombia. And what it did is it drove me away from the tourism zone, and it drove me to making friends with Colombians. So this all turned out to be a good thing, which in retrospect led to Raw Travel, because I wanted to show authentic experiences as opposed to the experience I first had when I first got there, which was an insular experience, hanging out with expats who, quite frankly, turned me off. And I wanted to get beyond that. So when I was in El Salvador, I started to see, and again, this is my first time there, but at least in El Tunco, a mix of people, like that hippie surf beach vibe, which I like, but also the Bitcoin bros, which I don't like. And they're from all over the world. They're not just the United States, Western Europe. I met a guy from Colombia. He was a nice guy. Now, getting to the security issue, I wanted to talk a little bit about that as well. I never felt a hint of danger. And I was very curious, as to how El Salvadorians felt about that, about their new sense of security. And most seem to be very optimistic and happy, and they're very hospitable people. And it is a beautiful country, and there is a lot to see, and that's what you're going to see on the video. What you won't see on the video are me talking to people about Bukele and about the repercussions of this. And the reason you won't is because a lot of people did not want to talk to me about it. Why did they not want to talk to me about it? Some, quite frankly, were just happy with the way things are. good to go. I'm like, okay, that's their right. They live there. They have to live with the consequences of gang violence, and they have to live with the consequences of a partial dictatorship or whatever this is that Bukele has got going on. That's their right, man. As a visitor, I'm not going to tell them how to live. I've been there like 5 days. But some people, and they were generally not El Salvadorians, but were afraid to talk to me because they had heard that WhatsApp would eavesdrop, and if the name Bukele was mentioned, and it sounds silly, but this stuff happens, then you'd be eavesdropping and they would have problems. And so that experience alone told me that this is not a free country. El Salvador is not going, because in Colombia, I don't watch what I say. You know where I watch where I say? In Cuba. In Vietnam, maybe a little bit. I didn't really watch what I had to say in Nicaragua, though I would now if I went back. Obviously, Russia in 2010. That's a totally different experience that I'll tell you about sometime. But yeah, that's your first clue to me that democracy is eroding in El Salvador. Now, fast forward to today, as I said, I watched this. I filmed this in 2024. Fast forward to what is happening in the United States today. And coincidentally, I don't know why this always happens to me. Of course, Trump and Bukele had a meeting a couple weeks ago. And of course, we have someone that has been deported there that was here legally. And for that reason, I would not go back to El Salvador. Not because it isn't a beautiful country, not because it isn't hospitable, not because there's a lot to see and it's beautiful and all those good things, and not because necessarily 100% of Bukele and what he's doing there. I think that's what the El Salvadorians have to come to terms with and figure out what is the balance of security and our freedoms. But when it comes to this country, sending people to a prison and deporting them, rightly or wrongly, to the prison and the types of prisons, and as you've seen, if you've seen some of the footage there, it's unpleasant. They're not like prisons here in the United States. It is, to me, lacking a lot of the basic things that you would expect any human being to have. I don't have strong opinions about things like the death penalty and the prison system in the United States, other than to say that if you call it a correctional facility, it should be there to correct people, and that we shouldn't just throw people's lives away. And warehousing mass incarceration at the level that El Salvador is doing, they have the highest incarceration rate in the world now. So that's the whole impetus of kind of the episode, is like, it's a beautiful country. I'm so happy I visited. Everyone is so nice and hospitable, but at what cost? And what cost are we willing to get? What cost are El Salvadorians willing to do? I know that in the United States, I've never been mugged or robbed that I'm aware of. Let me think. I've lived here a long time. I spent most of my time in the United States. So I really don't want my freedoms degraded. And when but then people flip that on its head and they talk about gun rights, right? Like, so your right to have an AR-15 trumps my right to be able to go freely to church or to school and to be alive, So these are conversations that we should be able to have civil dialogue and come to solutions. Of course, we know right now we can't, we won't. It's just the way it is. All right, so let me answer some questions. Sorry, I'm not making I'm making a lot of sense. The other thing I want to point out is, because I wasn't going to film, this was experimental. I filmed with the iPhone. It's video blogger style. It's not typical raw travel. There was no crew. And my editor, God bless him, is just a very talented intern. I can't remember if I used his real name or not, so I'm not going to shout him out right now because I told him, given the sensitivity of this subject, he may not want to. But watch the credits as they roll and you'll see. But he was an intern of mine, actually, he's not an intern, but he was someone I met who we talked about him interning. He's just very talented. And he was looking for a project. And I was like, hey, man, I got this experimental project. I shot this in El Salvador. Let's put something together and let's see how it works. It turned into a little bit bigger project than I expected. So you guys will have to be the judge. You watch it. You let me know if you like it. And if it does well, I will do more of them. If it doesn't do well, I will not do more of them. Just because I feel like the effort is just intense and there is money involved that I'll probably never ever make back. And that's okay. That's okay. So what is my channel? It's rawtravel.tv. I'm so sorry that the live link for this particular thing didn't work. Do you guys have questions in regards to, let me see if I've got any here. Yeah, I'm so sorry, man. You had to click live. I don't know what's up. I didn't have the streaming software downloaded or something. I don't know, man. Listen, when it comes to technology, I love it and I hate it. I hate doing what they say. It drives me nuts, man. They feel like it's not an oligarchy, it's a tech dictatorship. And, on Instagram, they tell you to be successful. And on TikTok, you need to post every day. You got to do these rules. And excuse my language, but I'm not going to say it. But I don't want to do it. I don't feel like it. I don't work for them. I don't work for Mark Zuckerberg. And I don't need his money. And that's the way I feel about it. I certainly don't work for Elon Musk. I'm not even on X. But let me give you a couple of quotes. Let me tell you about this book while we got you on live here. How to Stand Up to Dictatorships. I don't know how many of you guys know Maria Ressa, but as you know, I did go to the Philippines. And an interesting fact, in the Philippines, we filmed in season 2, so that was quite some time ago. One of the guides that guided me around, I forgot his name. He goes by one name. I think it was Jorge or something like that. And everybody knew him. He was kind of a celebrity there. He toured me around Old Manila, if for any of you who may remember that. He was being persecuted by the Filipino government because he said something about the Catholic Church. And he was very, very something, I guess, derogatory. But true, right? A criticism of the Catholic Church. And the Filipino government was threatening him with jail time, and this guy was wigged out. And I remember thinking, but then I talked to everyone in the Philippines. They're like, oh, no, we have free speech. We're free. And they were comparing it to the dictatorship that they had. So to them, they were free. To me, the fact that one of my guides was worried about jail time because he criticized the Catholic Church, which obviously there's no separation of church and state there, beginning kind of like it's starting to look here, trying to make it a theocracy, right? I was like, no, you really don't. These are things that travel has dawned upon me over the years. And so it's interesting that I had that experience so long ago, but it takes me years later to appreciate it when we're going through what we're going through right now. And when I've gone to places that I've gone to, like Cuba, where, I would say that was the biggest police state that I've been to, where I've actually seen people arrested for simply talking to me. The secondary one would be Russia, where I saw threat of arrest. And these were in the good old days. This was like 2010 when the FSB. So Maria Ressa is an American citizen. She's born in the Philippines, raised in New Jersey, went to school in New Jersey, went back to the Philippines as a journalist for CNN back in the day. And if you know her name, it's because she won the Nobel Peace Prize. Why did Maria Ressa win the Nobel Peace Prize? Because Maria Ressa, when she left CNN, started her own company, an online news media company called Rappler. And forgive me for those of you who already know this, but it was an investigative journalism and news organization. I haven't read the book yet, and I'll do maybe a Rob's Reads on it when I do it. But Duterte, when he was in power, brought the full force of the state against her, tried to bankrupt her, used bots and trolls to discredit her reputation. And one of the interesting things that she points out is what goes on in the Philippines is a test case for what happens in the rest of the world. Why? Because they are online more than almost any country in the world. 97% of them are on Facebook and have been on Facebook for years. So they're a test case for this abuse of online, basically just being able to get away with everything. And one of the things she mentions is that 1 out of 27 Trump supporters here in the United States online was traced back to the Philippines. So there are a lot of bot farms and troll farms. And that's something I neglected to talk about with Bukele, and something I'm fully expecting, kind of not hoping, but expecting that it may happen. There may be bots and trolls against this video that is about to premiere at 8 p.m. or this video, this live video when I post it. So I want you guys to be aware of that and to be on the lookout for that. And the reason that I felt like it's important to say this is because it can be instructive for us to understand how these things work. Bukele has an incredibly high approval rating, and everyone I spoke to, as I say in the show, spoke highly of him. Those who spoke. Those who didn't speak, what does their silence say? That they don't agree with him, but they're afraid to say so. That's not freedom. That's not democracy. And if my man, Bukele, is so wonderfully beloved by the people, why does he employ bot and troll farms, which he does, which I noticed in some of the research that I had done, to not only manipulate his image positively, but also to negatively go against and attack people who criticize him? That is exactly what's going on online. That is exactly what happened to Maria Ressa. When it gets beyond just online attacks and it goes to lawsuits and threat of jail time, she's still fighting for her freedom. She could go to jail for 100 years. And if you've ever seen Maria Ressa, just Google her. There's some great documentaries on her. She's my hero. That's why she won the Nobel Peace Prize, because she's so brave. She's like 5'2". Just this small, tiny woman stood up to this quote unquote strongman, Duterte. And they have a new government there in the Philippines that is a little more rational than Duterte, but she still is not out of the woods yet. And, you know, journalism is not a crime. Empathy is not a crime. And I think we need to tell people that. Let people know that because I'm empathetic to people does not allow you to abuse me. I will not stand for that. And you shouldn't either. Nor should you allow someone to abuse someone else for being empathetic, or for just simply telling the truth, or for being critical of the government, holding the powerful to account, which is what journalism is supposed to do. So there were a couple of quotes that I will leave you guys with, and before I start answering questions, if there are any. But Gandhi said, he said, non-cooperation with evil is as much a duty as is cooperation with good. So think about that for a second. This is Gandhi. Non-cooperation with evil is just as important as cooperation with good. It's much easier to cooperate with the good, right? But non-cooperation with evil, that's the most important thing. And right, what's going on right now? When people toe the line, when they're kowtowed into silence, when some people, Marco Rubio, man, I don't know what happened to this guy. I mean, all of this stuff that's going on, that's like trying to convince us that black is white and that white is black and that the grass is purple, and no, what you saw you didn't see, that wasn't really it, that was something else. These are all reminiscent of how things operate in Russia, which is an alternate reality. I think it works in Russia because they haven't truly experienced freedom. We in the United States, thankfully, have. I've only grown up under a free environment, right? Mostly free, mostly democratic. And it took me to travel to see and appreciate that. So just remember that quote. I'll try to post it at some point. But to not cooperate with evil is just as important as cooperating with good. And then Eli Wiesel, I read his book. He was a Holocaust survivor. I may be butchering his name. Pronunciation is not my thing. I don't know if you guys remember that. But I've read so many of his books. He has so many good quotes. And he warned us that there may be times when we're powerless to prevent injustice. So there will be times where you're powerless to prevent injustice. And you're like, wait a minute. Who are these heroes? Martin Luther King, Gandhi, Nelson Mandela. They prevailed. Yeah, but they weren't always prevailing. They were losing before they were winning, right? And it was only after they won, years after, that they were celebrated. And many of the people that celebrate Martin Luther King would be the ones to put a bullet in his head back then. They would be the same people, the same people. The same people who quote MLK Day and talk about what a great man he is. Back then, when he was not popular, they would have been the ones spewing hate to that man. Not all, obviously not. But Eli Wiesel warned, there will be times when we're powerless to prevent injustice, but there must never be a time when we fail to protest. So in a way, this video is kind of doing that, even though it's after the fact, even though it was before the fact, actually, and is airing after the relevance of this video came to mind. I would have produced a very different video. I would have filmed a very different video if I were to go back. And I would have asked harder questions. I would have gotten interviews off the record, maybe disguised their voice, all that kind of stuff that I didn't do in this one. This is more travel related. But I want to at least touch on this issue because it's important. Should you go to El Salvador? That's up to you. I'm not going, not again because of the El Salvadorian people who I adore, or the country, which I thought was wonderful, or even Bukele at this point, but because I feel like if I did get sideways, let's say I had an accident and I ran over someone and they took me straight to jail, and they're like, oh, you were on your phone. I was like, no, even if it was whatever. The government doesn't have my back. My government, I don't think would have my back because I'm not one of the good, I'm not on their side, right? I'm a critic of them. And that's how travel has changed dramatically, man. I have to think about where I go now. I can't just go to Azerbaijan or certain places in Central Asia. I might get, snatched and taken to somewhere, get a red notice and taken somewhere like Russia. I mean, I'm a small fish. And because I'm a small fish, am I worth the trouble? Probably not. That's my protector. But also at the same time, I could be easily forgotten about. I'm not a big name. So because I'm not a big name, I'm not a professional WNBA basketball player, I could easily be thrown in jail. And I know a guy in a Russian jail right now who only made headlines the day, he's an American citizen, only made headlines the day he's put in jail. No one said anything since then. All right, Jason, let's see. Yeah, man. So Jason asked, I'm looking to visit El Salvador in the near future. I don't want to tell you not to go at all. El Tunco was great. The Ruta de las Flores. Watch the video. You'll see, some really good things that you can hit. And of course, I didn't hit them all. I was only there for 5 days. Not being a journalist, not being me, being you, as a tourist, as a traveler, I would totally go. If your conscience tells you that's the right thing to do. My conscience right now is I hate to tell people to go because I don't necessarily think, it's good to support Bukele and his economy necessarily. But at the same time, I went to Cuba. I did go to Russia. And, curious travelers want to go. And then the locals benefit from your, it's not just the government that benefits from your travels. So that's a personal question. I think that you got to look at, ask. And then when you go, just, follow the letter of the law, like I always do. I'm getting ready to go to South America again. And I'm always on my best behavior when I travel because I've seen Locked Up Abroad, and I hate to be a fearmonger, pretending that, you're going to get in trouble. I haven't gotten in trouble, thankfully. But one of the things that always was reassuring in my mind and why I went to some of these places was my government has my back. The embassy will get me out. I'm an American. I am so privileged and so thankful for that privilege. Understanding that many people don't have that privilege. I have so many Colombian friends that can't go hardly anywhere. It's terrible. And it's not right, All right, man, we got Chris. Venezuela. I did go to Venezuela, man. Chris is asking, Chris Bright, longtime fan, good chef, by the way. I got to eat your vegetarian food, man, when I come out I haven't been to LA in a long time, man. I got to get out there. But basically, you went there in 75. Wow. You had an automatic rifle pointed at you on a tourist bus. I always think I have wild stories, but you guys have wilder stories. I went to Venezuela in 2006. So the president was Chavez, and he was up for re-election. And I remember distinctly talking to taxi drivers. What they all my friends here in the United States that were of Venezuelan descent. First of all, they freaked out when they heard I was going. I was on the plane and I told my friend, "Hey, yo, guess where I'm headed?" And he's like, "Where?" And I'm like, "Venezuela." He's like, "No, you're gonna get killed." And I was like, "Oh man!" And then the plane took off. Like what a great send off this guy gave me. And I flew into Caracas, spent the night, and then went to Isla Margarita Islands, which felt completely safe. I've heard and talked to many Venezuelans since then that Los Roques, Margarita Islands, they're safe. Here's the problem with Venezuela, though. It's the exact same problem that you go anywhere where they have an authoritarian government. If they decide to take you hostage, what's your importance? As an American, same reason you wouldn't go to Russia, even if you felt like it was okay to go and support their economy. As an American, you're going to get targeted. Now, if you're Tucker Carlson, you serve a purpose for the regime. So they're not going to kidnap him, right? He's safe. He's one of them. But if you're Robert Rose, am I worth the trouble? I don't know. But I don't want to take that chance, right? So I can imagine in 1975 that it was scary, And you're right, it isn't always easy for the government to get you out. That's another thing that we need to realize. And I think that calculated risk, like when I went to Cuba in 2009 before the show. And I remember thinking, I'm a non-citizen right now, because I'd had a friend who went to Cuba years before, a filmmaker, and he died. He died in Cuba. And everybody's like, "Oh, Cuba's so safe." And I'm like, "It wasn't for my buddy." Now, there are extenuating circumstances. He was Dominican American. He was there for the film festival. And he took a lot of cash because you can't use ATM. So that's a problem. You go to Cuba and do that. And, I don't know what happened. He didn't travel a lot. He was supposedly flashing his cash. All I know is they found him the next day, robbed of his passport and his money, and he was taken to a Cuban hospital because I guess, I know he was dark-skinned, so they thought, the police, when they got him, he was Cuban. No passport, no identification. Cuban hospitals ain't like the other hospitals that Michael Moore showed you on his little documentary. They didn't have sheets on the bed. I interviewed someone mutual friend, after she got back. She was there with him. No lights in the hallways. And long story short, he slipped into a coma, got an infection, and died of what was probably would have been preventable, and they couldn't get him out. George Bush was president, George Bush Jr., and they couldn't get him out in time to save his life. They did get his body out because he worked for, I think it was Access, wherever Billy Bush, George Bush's nephew, worked. That's what my buddy worked for. Alfred, I think is his name. And, here's the thing. That happened to him, and he got like that much press. So, you're right. It's not easy to get out. That's why you don't want to get in trouble when you're abroad. But you take a risk, right? And so in 2009, I took a risk because I was just a tourist with a camera. In 2016, I went back again. And why did I go back again? Well, travel was opening up. President Obama had tried to normalize relations, and everybody was optimistic. And I knew that Cuba would not, even if I'm filming undercover, would not probably arrest me and cause problems in an international incident and mess all this goodness up. All that goodness is evaporated. So, I personally would not go to Cuba again. So you have to think about those things. And, I don't have a family that depends on me. And this is the line of work I've chosen. And kind of what I wanted to do with Raw Travel was show you guys, places that maybe we're off the beaten path, About Americans, Jason. So Jason's asking, what are my general thoughts and attitudes about Americans. It'll be interesting because I'm going to Europe this summer. And I haven't figured out exactly where in Europe I'm going. I know I'm going back to Ukraine, but I'm trying to do some travel around there, hopefully some places I haven't been to before. And it'll be very interesting how they respond. My general reaction is, because I did travel during the Bush years, during the Iraq invasion and Afghanistan, and people were not happy with George Bush, the international community at the time, which seems crazy right now that you compare what we're doing, what we're going through. And I remember a couple of times just like pretend you're Canadian. If you get uncomfortable, I'm not a big like wearing an American flag everywhere I go kind of thing. People think I'm Ukrainian. I know at my gym they think I'm Ukrainian, I'm sure, because I wear Ukrainian shirts. And if I wear a flag, it's anti-flag. It's the band with the upside down flag. And they probably think I'm some MAGA Trump guy or when Biden was president, and now they probably think I'm a disaffected American, which I guess I am. But I wear it because it's a band T-shirt. So it's like a political statement, but I don't try to make those when I'm traveling abroad. That's the deal, Yeah, you went to Ukraine 2018. That was, listen, they got invaded. I was there in 2012 before the Maidan Revolution, before Crimea and Eastern Donbass was invaded by Russia. And the difference in 2012 and when I went back in 2019, so you were there like a year before I went back to film again, was huge. Just in Kyiv, the capital city. Because in 2012, I remember I saw a magnet that was for sale on one of the tourist areas in the old town. And it said, Ukraine, home of the not smiling people. I was like laughing. I was so hilarious. But I did not engage a bunch of gregarious people. And look, the Stoic Slavic culture exists. It's a stereotype. It exists for a reason. But what happens in Ukraine versus my memories of Russia in particular, especially Moscow, but Kyiv versus Moscow, is that in Kyiv, you'll get the stoicism, but right before you leave, you're going to get a smile and a laugh. And then other parts are even friendlier. And, whenever I cross over from Poland into Ukraine, I just feel more relaxed, even at war, because I'm treated really well. People are very hospitable in comparison to other parts of Western Europe, which I find kind of ironic, right? But the difference in 2012 and 2019 was huge. And the gregariousness that I felt in 2019, I did not feel in 2012. Could have just been personal. I was filming in 2019. 2012, I was just kind of like doing a tour around Eastern Europe. And it was just one of 4 destinations that I went to. And, people were nice. But I was like, it's kind of like Russia, like a cheap poor man's Russia is what I called it, which I regret, but that's what I said. And it was a different time. People did speak. I did say spasiba. 2019, I did not say spasiba. I said it, but I got corrected. It's Jaku. They were reclaiming their culture and their language. So Ukraine, even though it's been independent since the 90s, it's struggled to grow underneath the Russian, not only occupation, but just their influence. And that's why it's been so poor, right? It's been betwixt and between NATO and the Northern and Western Europe and the EU and Russia. And it's neither here nor there. And that has hurt their economy. So they turned westward, especially young people, because they want a better life. And that's when Russia, of course, did what they did. And when they were unable to politically control and manipulate Ukraine, that's whenever Yanukovych, during the Maidan Revolution, got thrown out. Yanukovych was a Putin puppet. That's when Russia invaded. But they invaded little green men. They did it much more inconspicuously than they do it now. Now they're out in the open. And that, I think, is what's happening, is that we're seeing authoritarianism out in the open now. No one's ashamed or embarrassed about it. They're supportive. And all I got to say to that they're going to be on the wrong side of history. I don't know when or where or how this is all going to correct, but it is. My goal is to stay alive until it does. Hopefully enjoy the fruits of that and remember those people. Take a screenshot, man. I have a little folder on my computer and it's called the Haters Hall of Fame. And I don't do it all the time or I'm just not, I'm too busy. But when I get a nasty troll comment or an email, maybe 1 out of 5 times, I'll just throw it in there. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to come back to that later. And I never do. But at some point, I'll go through there and be like, yo, look at this dude, Billy Bob from Detroit. Look what he said. Let me see if he's still around. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not going to do anything. But it gave me a sense of documentation, I guess, which is just runs through my veins, right? Of I need to record what's happening, right? For potential future use. And I think what people need to understand is that there are consequences to actions and statements, right? I am willing to pay the consequences for what I say, understanding that can come. I don't think it will. And I may change my tune if I'm faced with this, but it can come at the ultimate price. It most certainly has for many people, or at a price that threatens to take you there, like Maria Ressa. Hasn't occurred to me, not really, but it could. And I understand that when I say something. I'm not being glib. I'm saying something thoughtfully, understanding of what that may incur. Just like when I put out this El Salvador episode, I'm like, who am I? What do I stand for? And if I can't at least put an honest representation of how I feel about this, or felt at the time, then I'm just as big of a coward. I'm cooperating with evil, right? And cooperating with evil is just as bad as enabling it, I think. So I go ahead, and if I doubt it, it actually makes me want to do it more, which is why trolling never works with me. All these people, whenever the Zelensky and Trump thing happened, I'm like, you don't understand, man. I grew up with a person 10 years older than me trying to control me, and all it did was create this, which I'm thankful for now. But any person who tries to control me is going to get shut down because it has the opposite effect. No, I've never been to the Olympics. I never would go because I don't like crowds. And I'm not a big Olympic fan. I don't watch it on TV. I think it might be cool, but I don't like crowds. I live in New York. I think I went to the Rockefeller Christmas tree lighting when I first moved here, thinking that was something to do. And I was like, oh my God, this is terrible. It was just too much. I don't like it. I haven't been to New Year's Eve here. Crowds in general, I don't like. I love to get away from crowds and zig when everyone else zags. Also, the prices are lower. I have been post-Olympics to South Korea, and that was interesting because, they had all this nice infrastructure and empty hotels and these really nice hotels that were there built for the Olympics, and I was there. I have mixed feelings about the Olympics. I think like a lot of big money things, it gets corrupted. World Cup, obviously, is hugely corrupt, in many ways. But does it do good? Yes. Does it do bad? Yes. I'll let the experts argue about whether it does more harm than good. I will watch it. I'm not going to, out of principle, not watch the World Cup. I do love the World Cup. And if I went to see anything in a crowd environment, it would be the World Cup. Because I can tell you that going to see a soccer game in person can make you a soccer fan. It's amazing. It's amazing. So anyway, guys, that's my story. Unless we have any more questions, I'm so sorry for the, man, what are you gonna do? Best laid plans. I don't know how to do technology, and I don't know how to schedule a live video anymore. So we understand our weaknesses, right? And I'll just do it this way from now on, I guess. Authoritarian populism. Yeah, the pandemic. So Jason asked what's driving authoritarianism and populism? I think a few things. Of course, the pandemic laid the groundwork, but here in the United States, Citizens United, laid the groundwork for dark money to influence our politics and the gerrymandering that's going on. And I'm not trying to shed shade on our electoral process, but it does. I mean, it's not majority rule at this point. That is obvious. When you have 60% of the people believing wanting one thing, but that not occurring, then that's minority rule, and that's authoritarianism. So it's rigged that way. So when Trump says it's rigged, it is, but it's not rigged the way he says it is. That started it here, and unfortunately, when Trump got elected, and I always do these kind of thought experiences, like what if Gore had become president instead of Bush Jr., what would have happened versus, because, it just has so many unintended consequences, and it's like it just keeps going, right? It keeps reverberating. And then when Trump got elected in 2016, the hope that was just a blip on the radar faded after January 6th, when people began to deny that even happened or was a thing. And then they pardoned that, like, what are we doing? Like, this is crazy. So I think, disinformation is driving a lot of it, because one of the things that Maria Ressa talks about in her book is the reality that is online is the reality offline. So if you have lawless behavior online, which it never got regulated, we let these broligarchs rule the world. They're ruling our world. YouTube telling me I got to download this for a like, blah, 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 whatever, man, jumping us through hoops, harvesting our data, making money off our backs, off our anger. And so it just makes it fertile for disinformation and people that are bad players, like TikTok. I did a TikTok channel just to see what's up. Maybe I could use it to drive some YouTube viewership. And also I was curious. And I did it before the election, and I had to take it down. It's just pro-Trump stuff was just flooding me. And then I reactivated it again after the election. I was like, oh, maybe I won't see so much political stuff, and I can have fun stuff on there. And they censored me. They censored everything I did about El Salvador. Not only do they censor, or shadow ban as it's called, they, you can buy influence there. So it's just like buying influence. Just like in our dark money, you buy influence of politicians by, dark money campaign finance through super PACs. Online, Russia can take this oil money and instead of improving their society, which is broken, use it to manipulate society that everything isn't broken, and then try to drag the rest of democracy down with it. To what end? I guess just pure greed. 'Cause they don't think like us, right? And I don't mean Russians and Americans. I mean billionaires and oligarchs and people who are trying to run the world. They don't think like you and me. They don't have empathy, obviously, or they've moved beyond that. So I think there's, songs censored on YouTube. I mean, there's censorship. Some of it I get. Like if I put up some Ukraine war footage, I get it, man. That's sensitive content. I try not to do that, but occasionally I'll get emotional and do it because it's forwarded to me, and I'm like, people need to see this. I think some censorship is okay. Like they were censoring, because you have the right to say it, you just don't have the right to say it on their platform. But the way that they're using it is for means beyond, it's not democratic or freedom. They're not trying to be fair about it. The thing about journalism, and then I'll kind of probably end on this so you guys can watch the video. I mean, it's not like it's going anywhere. It starts at 8, but I'm going to go for a run. But basically, journalists, I never considered myself a journalist until I was talking to an actual journalist, someone who does it has been doing it for a living for a while. And I was like, I'm not a journalist. He's like, wait, what do you do? And I was telling him what I did. And he's like, you're a journalist. I was like, how? He's like, you're bearing witness. He's like, are you trying to be fair? And I'm like, yeah, but I'm not objective. I don't necessarily, know all the, fact checking and checking my sources or whatnot, other than, just follow my instincts here. And he's like, that's it. You try to be fair. Because everyone's got biases. that much we know. And I think what we're seeing on one end of the spectrum, in particular, where falsehoods are being peddled, or they're being packaged into 95% truth but 5% falsehoods, or taken out of context and trying to mislead people. And it happens across the board, but it happens really hardcore on somewhere like Fox News or OAN or Newsmax, where they're not even on the fairway of truth. They don't even care anymore. And I think when you see that, Zelensky is a dictator, Ukraine started the war. I mean, these are obvious falsifications, right? And they're not trying to get you to believe that necessarily. There will be a certain amount of people who will believe it, and I think that's willful ignorance. They want to believe it, so they will. So it's for them. But for the rest of us, it's to frustrate us and to let us know that, or to try to send the message that truth doesn't matter, and to get us to doubt the truth. Those, I call them the malleable middle. These are people who don't really have an ideology or anything, and that's fine. I think that's great. But they also don't have a moral center. And they're so easily manipulated and influenced by something they saw online. And I just don't get that. I don't get it. And that's why I'm like, read a book, travel, go watch documentaries. Of course, we're all influenced by our world around us and by what people say. And I absolutely can go back 20 years and say, yeah, I was definitely influenced by certain things around me. And I've grown, and I will continue to grow, right? That's what life is about. But at the end of the day, you got to have a moral center and say, well, no, that's not true. I don't care if I agreed that am I a Trump supporter, January 6th is not proper. That's not the way we do things. And that's why I thought, that was the end of that, because so many people stood up against that, who were, Republicans, I guess. I hate the left-right GOP versus Democrat thing. But basically, when they stopped doing that, or someone like a Marsha Blackburn, great example, she's a senator from Tennessee, I've met her, I've known her, speaks out of both sides. Putin cannot win, comes in and talks like, she's a big supporter of Ukraine, then votes against aid for Ukraine every time. And, came out against January 6th when she thought that was popular, but then now is a huge Trump supporter now that that's popular. And that's what we're seeing. It's just a lot. And I think when you see it, what makes me feel better about the world is like, these people are weak. They're weak. And it's sad, but that's on them. That's not on you and me. That's on them. And I think the best we can do is let them know that we know that they're weak. And that's it, And history will judge them for what they are. All right, guys, it's 8 o'clock. I'm going to go. Thank you so much. So sorry for being just an idiot about YouTube Live. I learned a lesson, but I really appreciate those of you who tuned in, who made an effort to find it. You had to. This will be uploaded for everybody who wants to see it afterwards. And just remember, when you start to see some attacks, if you start to see them, and maybe because I've outed them in advance, they won't do it. The bots and troll farms, that's how Bukele rolls. That is how he rolls. So that's out of the authoritarian handbook. So let's see if he takes the bait. Come on, Bukele, bring your bots and troll farms. Let's see what you got, bro. All right, thanks, guys. Let's see if I know how to turn this off.